In this video, I'm going to teach you 7 simple drone movements that you can learn in under a couple of minutes that'll help your footage go from bad to epic. So let's go and fly. Yeah, you heard that right. 7 simple drone movements. Look, they're really not that difficult, these drone movements. And while there are many more drone movements out there, I made a selection of 7 simple ones that give a lot of bang for your buck. But in order to get good footage on your drone, there's a couple of basics that we need to cover. Now, the first basic that we need to cover is that you need to get your camera settings dialed in. I've got a separate video for that, which you can click on in the pop-up banner above here. Having the right camera settings can really make the difference between having footage that looks kind of bad to footage that starts looking better almost immediately. Second up, what you need to do is you need to understand the very basics of composition. Now, while there are so many things to learn about composition, I'm going to leave you as a beginner in this video with just one tip. Nobody wants to see more of the sky when looking at a drone footage, unless it's intentional. But we can see the sky from down here, and it looks exactly the same when you point the camera on your drone towards the sky. So generally, we want the most of the frame to be filled with landscape from a unique angle that only drones can achieve. In this case, we'll use the grid lines, and we'll almost always set the horizon at the top grid line as shown here. Now, in some cases like this one, where I fly my drone very low over a lake, you can set the horizon on the bottom grid line. Now that we've got the basics of composition covered, I want to talk about something else that's important before we start talking about the moves themselves. If you make drone footage, you have to move the drone in a steady movement, meaning that once you commit to the movement, you got to keep the drone moving in exactly that way. If you don't, then the movement becomes too sudden, and suddenly people start realizing, hey, this drone is actually moving, and it jars up the eyes of the viewer. It's just not that great. Now, lastly, I'm explaining these movements in a way that the drone's controller is mapped. There's a couple of different ways that the 2 joysticks of a drone controller can be mapped, and the way I'm using it is the standard way, meaning that if you've unboxed your drone and you didn't touch anything, then this is the layout that the sticks will use, and you can use my guide easily. All right, with that out of the way, let's move into drone movement 1, which is the pullback reveal. Pullback reveal is great for showing scale. You start on the subject and slowly pull the drone back and reveal a much grander place. This is great for establishing shots or to create a sense of perspective, right? To dwarf the subject, basically. Now, this is a relatively easy shot to do. All you need to do is move the drone back or back and slightly upwards. Let me explain. Step 1 is to start close to the subject while the frame is not showing or revealing any hints of where the subject is. Step 2 is to move the drone backwards or slightly upwards steadily and keep it moving like that until it reaches the maximum allowed altitude or until it reaches such a zoomed out position that you can no longer see the subject. And step 3 is to stop the recording. That's it. As simple as. Now let's go over the second shot of this list, which is the push in. Push-in shot builds tension around a subject, a person, or a piece of scenery in a landscape. It draws the viewer in, creating sort of an emotional connection. And the push-in is by far the easiest shot of the bundle. All you need to do is find a position to start, move the drone forward, and press the cruise control button so that the drone keeps this steady movement all the way up until the end. Let's move over to shot number 3, the truck and follow. Trucking is a cinematic camera movement in which the camera moves from left to right. It shows you the dynamics of a scenery while keeping the subject perfectly centered in frame so that it's not too jarring for the eye. Now there's different levels of doing trucking movement. It's easier to follow a person because the person is walking kind of slow and can adjust their speed a little bit accordingly, while it's more difficult to film a moving object that's large, such as a ship or the train that you saw before. And you can see I was struggling with the train. The train was speeding up as it was departing the station and going across the bridge, meaning that I had to speed up the drone and I had a hard time keeping it in frame. In order to achieve this shot, I might have had to put the drone into sport mode, but there were lots of obstacles over the canal, so I didn't really want to risk losing the drone because the obstacle avoidance was turned off. Now let me teach you how to do a truck follow movement. First, you got to start with having your drone framed up nicely and waiting for the subject to either move into the frame or for the subject to just stand into the frame if you're filming somebody that you can control. Next up, what you need to do is you need to make sure that you match the speed of the subject with the drone itself, meaning that within the frame, the subject is staying perfectly still and only the surroundings are sliding past. A truck follow works nicer if you have like a foreground image going in between you and the subject, or let's say in between the drone and the subject. And that brings us to another sideways movement, which is movement number 4, and that's the orbit. Orbits are the most common drone shots I see out there, and yet I see people struggling with doing a clean orbit a lot of the times. An orbit is a way of keeping the subject centered while showing you different sides of the subject, and it shows you a large amount of landscape behind the subject. Now there are 2 ways of doing an orbit. You can do it manually by just using stick inputs, or you can use the DJI point of view or point of interest tracking method. I'll teach you both. First, let's go over how to do it with just the sticks. What you need to do is you need to put the left and right stick and push it in opposite directions, either towards each other or away from each other. But you need to constantly monitor whether or not your subject stays in the same place in the frame. If it's moving too far to the left or the right, it might not look as nice. The other method is to do it with the tracking that's in the DJI software. All you need to do is select active track, and as you do it, you select the field around whatever you want to be in the center of this frame for the orbit, drag a field around it, and then as the field is selected, you'll see that it centers up the frame nicely, and then you can just move the right joystick either to the right or to the left to make an orbit clock or counterclockwise. Now that we've used forward motion and sideways motion, there is one other direction the drone can get to, and that is either up or down. With the crane up reveal, what you need to do is get a foreground element that totally obscures the background element, and you need to move the drone upwards in a way that the foreground element starts leaving the frame. The way to do it is first frame up whatever is behind the foreground element so that when the reveal happens, that looks nice and you don't have to adjust on the fly, and then just move the drone downwards and let the foreground element come into view. I think this shot works nicer when you use manual focus, not autofocus, and you fly up to frame up whatever you want to reveal nicely, put the focus there, and then fly down and let the foreground element be blurry, out of focus, because then you don't get this focus pull halfway through when the camera is deciding, oh, now the foreground element is away and we need to focus on the background element. it just looks a little better. All right, the last two of these motions are slightly more difficult as they want you to use the tilt wheel or the gimbal tilt wheel. Not every drone has it, but most modern drones have a gimbal on the front side that allows the camera to move up and down. And in these two shots, you're going to combine them with a forward or backward motion. Now let's talk about number 6, which is a push in, tilt up. Push in, tilt up creates a sense of discovery. It allows the viewer to see more than what they expected to see at the beginning of the shot. It's used a lot in film to set up a new scene, and oftentimes this is where movies start. The push in, tilt up requires two things. It requires you to move forward at a steady pace, and it requires you to tilt the camera from all the way downward at a 90-degree angle up to where the frame is nice, so where the horizon is in one of the two lines on your grid. And this takes some practice. Now, one thing you want to do is to set the max tilt speed of your gimbal at something that you think is looking nice when you execute this move. That way you don't have to try and figure out the nice tilt speed by feeling on the dial. No, you can just yank it to the end and then the camera will go up at a speed that you like. Secondly, you want to put the tilt smoothness at something that's very high, so it doesn't just jars to a stop, but it actually gradually goes into a stop. Then all you need to do is find a nice subject, find a nice trajectory towards the subject where the floor or the water is interesting to look at, execute the forward movement and lock it in with the cruise control, and then hit the gimbal and tilt the camera up to reveal something beautiful. And lastly, the opposite of the push in, tilt up is a pullback, tilt down. Now this shot again is used quite often in cinema, and it's just because it's a really nice shot to use. You want to start with a nice patch of sky. If something's happening in the sky, even better, like a plane flying by or some birds like I had in my shot. And you want to start the bottom of the frame to be just above the subject that you want to reveal. Now, we've already talked about the gimbal settings and nothing changes here. Again, what you want to do is you want to initiate backwards movement on the drone, not too fast, not too slow, so have some practice with that. Hit cruise control, and this time you want to angle the gimbal down at a slow speed that you defined in your settings. And again, come to a complete stop with the horizon at one or the two grid lines. This gives you a nice mystical reveal of, in this case, ruins, but you can use it on a church. You can use it to reveal yourself standing on a mountain with your bike or whatever. I'll leave that up to you. This is how the movement works, and I think it's a great one. And there you have it, 7 simple, easy to execute drone movements for you that you can use almost anywhere, and that will bring you plenty of footage to make your new edits. I had fun making this video, and I hope you enjoyed watching it as well. Now, if you made it to the end, you could help me out so much by liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and hitting the bell icon, and that way you'll get notified when a new video comes out, so you can watch that one too and get better at flying your drones. For now, my name is Ori. If you want to watch another video, you can click the video right here as it appears, and I'll see you in the next video.